Fearscape Media Network, exploring the unknown, one podcast at a time.
Support for Fearscape Paranormal Podcast is brought to you by Manscaped. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels.
Yeah, man. I used to use a regular beard trimmer for taking care of business down below.
Oh, dude, I just gave up on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, after you nick yourself a couple of times, and I'm really sensitive about that area because I really don't know what's going to happen if I cut into something that is a pump full of blood. You know what I'm saying?
Well, dude, I'm super excited that we were some of the first people to get to try the Lawnmower 4.0. In fact, Josh, using it right now.
Oh, why'd you have to leave the video on? Come on, dude.
Smooth as eggs. Seriously, though, man, I love this. I have really, really sensitive skin. So getting to have advanced skin-safe technology on this thing, I now feel confidence shaving not only my face, but below the waist. Right. And now you don't even have to bust out your cell phone flashlight because it has a light on the front of it to hit those dark areas. Makes all the difference in the world. So I'm just telling you guys right now, our listeners, if you guys are shaving your face and body with the same trimmer, you are doing it wrong.
So if you want to pick up your own Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer or any of the other great products that are offered by Manscaped, like these amazing boxer briefs that they sent us.
So comfortable.
Head on over to manscaped.com and use promo code Fearscape and get 20% off and free shipping. Again, 20% off, free shipping, manscaped.com, promo code Fearscape. Unlock your confidence now.
Smooth as eggs.
Hi, friends. This is Kelly with Wishful Drinking and Binge Thinking, the podcast where I get just absolutely hammered and I dole out psychological advice. That's right, I am going to be more drunk than that girl you met in the bar bathroom after your karaoke set who said, "You have such good stage presence. Oh my God." That's right, zero preparation, multiple drinks, countless profound gems. Tune in the last Monday of every month on Fearscape Media Network.
Thank you for tuning in to Fearscape Paranormal Podcast. We are on a journey to understand and to discover the phenomena that seems to exist all around the globe. We invite you to join us on this journey into the unknown.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another thought-provoking episode of Fearscape Paranormal Podcast here on the Fearscape Media Network. I am your host, Stefan Gearhart, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, who looks like a dry piece of toast, Mr. Josh Rutledge. How are you, sir? Where's your butter?
I mean, I'm trying to get down on that moisturizer game, but, it's tough.
Wait till you get to Arizona. You're just going to be a pile of ash. Just walking around.
I realized the other night that, I sleep with a CPAP at night, and I realized that I'm going to have to use the humidifier part of it out there. Like now I can get by without it because the house is humid enough, but out there I'm going to have to use it.
Oh yeah. I mean, people just naturally have humidifiers most of the year anyways.
Yeah.
So
but anyways,
it's dry. But yeah, we got a really cool episode, you guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, as you usually do. We have author, podcaster, blogger, crypto man of the year, in my opinion, Mr. Lon Strickler is going to be on the show tonight. Getting spooky with Lon Strickler. This man, phantoms and monsters. Like, that's all I gotta say, man.
Yeah.
is just what an incredible guy. And so we're going to have him on tonight. We're going to be getting spooky with him. So please stick around for that amazing interview. But Josh, let's get moving, man. You know, we got lots to talk about, lots of things like reminding people to like, share, rate, review, all that jazz when you're out there on Apple Podcasts and, all the other places you can rate and review, as well as making sure to join our Patreon because, for example, this aired 2 weeks ago on our Patreon. We're actually letting the interviews that we have with folks, we're doing those live now for Patreon members only, $9 tier and above. It's pretty cool. And so this interview with Lon Strickler is going to be the first one. And it's something you don't want to miss. You'll be able to get to see these interviews unedited, extra kind of back and forths and things like that live on Patreon and for Patreon members only. So, make sure you get out there, patreon.com/fearscapepod or fearscapepodcast.com/support. So much other stuff, of course, wristwatch and all the stuffs.
All the Patreon stuff, in the store, get you some Jersey Devil t-shirts and socks. And
I'll tell you what, I wear them and they're comfy.
The only thing that I wish Redbubble had and they don't is pajama pants. I would get me some Jersey Devil pajama pants.
For sure. So lots of ways to help support the show, and we like to give back when you give forward. So please go ahead and check out all of those things on our fearscapepodcast.com. There's lots of links everywhere. Let's go ahead and get right into our first segment, as usual, Psychic Word of the Week.
And now, the Psychic Word of the Week.
Psychic Word of the Week, as usual, comes from the Encyclopedic Psychic Dictionary from June G. Bletzer, PhD. Rest in peace, honey bear. Rest in peace. Shut up. That's my girl. Okay. Rest in peace, honey bear. We love you. Don't even know you. So I flipped through the pages, Josh. I landed on page 526, and the phrase that popped out to me this week was Raven's Wing. Ooh. It is the wing of a raven, and close and shut. No. Raven's Wing. It's an alchemy term. Says a rock crystal formation of blue-black fluid in the alchemist's receptacle, which on contact with air will solidify and break up. This is then an entirely new substance, unknown in nature, possesses all the properties of pure chemical elements which cannot be separated by chemical means. The essence of the metals, called the soul, will someday be released from the hermetically sealed receptacle that the alchemist so tenderly handled in the furnace.
So it starts out as a liquid and then becomes a solid.
Nope.
No?
Yeah, it says a rock crystal formation of blue-black fluid that which on contact with air, solidifies and breaks up, creating a new substance unknown in nature. And it has pure chemical elements that cannot be separated by chemical means. The essence of the metals is called the soul, which will someday be released.
You know what?
When we get to alchemy, I definitely don't know a whole lot about. So.
What this kind of reminds me of, though, is in the the Showtime docuseries on UFOs. The one from JJ we talked about with Chrissy. There's at least one episode where a couple witnesses talk about coughing up this blackish blue liquid after their encounter.
Interesting. I didn't even put that 2 and 2 together. My brain just went to Full Metal Alchemist. So,
but man. What if there's some sort of a linkage there? So,
well, I mean, we see that a lot. Obviously, if she had written this today, I don't think she would have called it the Encyclopedic Psychic Dictionary. I think it would have been called the Fortean Dictionary or the New Age Dictionary or something along High Strangeness along those lines.
Right.
Because there's more than just psychic stuff. Obviously, there's alchemy in there. We're talking about UFO stuff and Bigfoot and the like. But yeah, very interesting. That would be something to throw in there or to think about there. Is that the same stuff? We know how all connected this stuff can be. So
yeah, well, and it makes you think if anybody listening happens to have an experience like that, instead of spitting it in the sink, spit it into a vial and see if it turns solid.
Yeah, let it get some contact with air and go from there. All right, Josh. Well, let's get moving on, man. I want to get to Lon. So let's go to our next segment here, which is the Mandela effect.
Did you say Mandala?
No, I said Mandela. The Mandela effect.
All right, our Mandela effect. You guys know things that some people remember that other people don't. That is not shown that way anymore. A lot of this tends to be pop culture, of course, but not necessarily. Sometimes it's history related as well. So I've got two here for you. The first one that I have is not pop culture related, and that is the color chartreuse. Now, when you think of the color chartreuse, what color do you think of?
Kind of like a pinkish color.
Right. That's what I think as well. However, we are both incorrect. Chartreuse is actually a shade of green, and people will fight about it, whether or not chartreuse is green or reddish pink. However, it is actually a yellow-green color, and it gets its name from a greenish liquor called chartreuse.
Interesting. Well, before I gave the answer, pinkish color, in my brain popped green.
Well, so good for you, Josh.
I went against my brain and said pinkish color, but
but yeah, very interesting. I've always thought of chartreuse as thing, but I've looked on a number of different color wheels and it comes up and it shows like this yellow pukey green. So gross.
The way you remember it now is you just think chartreuse, charpuke, and then you'll know that it's like this yellowish green.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Forever. The next one does come from pop culture, and this one's one that I really struggled with as well. Comes from Gremlins, is the 1984 cult classic, of course, that was a hit with kids and adult movie goers. But those who saw the movie remember the name of the main villainous gremlin differently. What do you think his name was?
Spike.
That's what I remember it as well as Spike. However, as it turns out, his name, in fact, is Stripe. It's always been Stripe. Everything on there is Stripe. I think maybe the confusion just comes because he has a spike, but in the movie, he's always referred to as Stripe because I think that Stripe was his name as a Mogwai before he turned into a gremlin, and so it stayed that way.
I swear I had a little children's book of that went through the actions of the Gremlin story, but in a children's book, which is weird when you think about the fact that there was a children's book for Gremlins.
That's the 80s. Look at Ghostbusters now is looked at as kind of like a kid's movie, but it's not.
But yeah, and I swear I remember. I mean, I can remember every page in that book, and I swear it said Spike in that book.
No, and it says here on my website here that I read these from that there is some confusion though now being added to the confusion, as there are some licensed things now that do say Spike over the last few years that they've kind of just said, you know what, let's go with it because that's how people remember it. But it is anything prior to that all says Stripe. So
I wonder if in the second Gremlins maybe there was a Spike in that and people were confusing the two.
Maybe that's a possibility.
Because there was a similar haired Mogwai gremlin in Gremlins 2. So, it's like the one we talked about, Looney Tunes.
Mm-hmm.
And, do people think about Tiny Toons and just assume that Looney Tunes was TOONS instead of TUNES?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Real quick, one last one is Billy Graham's funeral. Billy Graham, the preacher extraordinaire, Billy Graham, and it's interesting because the picture they have on here is of his son, which I think is hilarious. But when do you recall Billy Graham dying?
Oh, I really don't know. I don't know, maybe early 2000s.
Right. Yeah. So I feel like it's about 10, 15 years ago. I feel like I remember like the big funeral, like it was a big ordeal. And so here's what this says. It's interesting that so many deaths of public figures are remembered quite differently from person to person. Reverend Billy Graham is one such example. Many folks swear that they remember watching the evangelist's funeral on TV at least a decade or more ago, much like we just said so. But in reality, Billy Graham passed away only back in 2018. So 3 years ago. But many folks, including myself, remember a televised funeral of Billy Graham a decade or so ago. So very interesting. I'm still shocked to see that this man only died 3 years ago, because I swear he died before I even like got together with Sarah.
Well, and I'm wondering too, because he did a big, speaking event in Louisville. I don't know if you remember that when you were still out here, but so I wonder if like people maybe confuse the news coverage of all of the traffic and everybody that went to see that speaking event and then they know it was Billy Graham related, and so they just assumed that maybe it was for his funeral.
Who knows? I don't know.
I
don't know. That's the power of the Mandela effect, Josh. That's the
Mandela effect.
That's the shut up. That's the craziness. So anyways, well, let's get moving on, man. Let's get to our final segment here. So JD can get his rocks off. Let's go ahead and move right into Cryptid of the Week.
Hi, y'all. It's the Jersey Devil. Hope y'all are ready to meet some of my friends.
Cryptid of the Week.
Okay, Josh, I'm going to push Stephen out of the way. I want to know which one of my friends you're going to be talking about.
We're talking about the Thetis Lake Monster.
I have no idea who that is.
Well, it was first reported in 1972.
Okay. Obviously, I'm way younger than that. Look at me.
Roughly 200 years after you were born, I think. So, yeah. In British Columbia, Canada. You ever make it up to the Canada area?
Girl, I go to Canada all the time. They film so many CW shows in Vancouver. I'm in a lot of them.
So this is an aquatic humanoid-like. It basically looks like the creature from the Black Lagoon in the drawing that they have here. And so it says, in the 1950s, the monster movies made it old school 3D film technology, picture, paper, 3D glasses, one red lens, one blue lens, very different from the glasses we use today. Gillman, the film's aquatic star, was a fictional prehistoric monster from the Amazon rainforest in South America. It looked very much like eyewitness descriptions of the Thetis Lake Monster.
Interesting. You know that I have one red eye and one blue eye, and so I see things in 3 dimensions.
Is that true? We all see
Most
things
people don't know that because I wear contacts.
We all see things in 3 dimensions.
Well, I see it in 1950s 3 dimensions, Josh.
You know what would suck is if you had one red eye and one blue eye and you were colorblind and you couldn't see the red spectrum.
Oh, yeah, that would suck.
So anyways, for nearly 20 years, Gillman was considered pure fiction. Then 2 teenagers claimed to have been attacked by its cousin in British Columbia, Canada. According to the Victoria Daily Times, the boys were chased from the Thetis Lake Beach in 1972 by a silver scale-covered biped 5 feet tall. One of the boys had a bloody wound left by the 6 razor-sharp points on the monster's head.
Josh, this is starting to sound like Claude Beast of the Ohio and the goblins here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
It says here that The police said the boys seemed sincere until we determined otherwise. We had no alternative but to continue our investigation. 4 days later, a man reported his pet tegu lizard missing near the lake. It was 3 feet long with a black and white skin. Satisfied the boys had actually seen the aggressive lizard, law enforcement closed the case. Daniel Loxton, the editor of Junior Skeptic magazine in Victoria, never believed the tegu lizard explanation, but he didn't believe the eyewitness story either. In 2009, he checked the 1972 television listings on a hunch, and his suspicions were confirmed. About a week before the attack, a local station had played Beach Girls and the Monster, a movie.
I know that song. Did you know that I used to cover that when I was a Bohemian?
I thought maybe you were a part of the Beach Boys. You're the long lost member.
Well, I inspired them, but I was not a part of them.
So it's a movie about an aquatic monster attacking teenagers. The 2 witnesses later admitted their story was a hoax, but the legend lingered. In 2012, fishermen said they saw a lizard man on the lake, and another eyewitness saw a humanoid with webbed hands and a monster face eating cat food on the back porch of a nearby house. So, yeah, I mean, it does sound very familiar, similar to the Clawed Beast, Loveland Frog, Kelly Hopkinsville, the whole again, it's just, it came from the water. What else is under the water? What caves exist to go up into the land and everything else? So, it's just another one of those mysteries.
Right. So, now you're like, man, did the person that created Creature from the Black Lagoon, where did they get their idea from?
Did they have an experience? Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? I don't know.
I don't know, but I'll tell you, I told you he's not my friend, but I want to go to Canada and meet him, though. He sounds super cool, Josh. I'll bet you I could get his autograph for you. It'd be wet, but I could get it.
Well, I mean, if he's a lizard man, he probably is super cool because he's cold-blooded.
Well, and he's in Canada, duh.
Yeah. I wonder if he's a snowbird.
Probably.
He swims south for the winter.
Thank you, JD. Thank you. All right, Josh, thank you so much. So yeah, great, cool cryptid of the week, man. I'm really excited about that. And of course, speaking of cryptids, we've got Lon Strickler on the show tonight. We're going to be getting spooky with Lon Strickler in just a few minutes. So please, 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 y'all, stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey there, blanket huggers. Stefan here from Fearscape Paranormal Podcast. Got some good news for you. If you want to join in on the investigation of the mystery of the recent emails from the man claiming to be Terry Wrist to Josh and myself, aka the Spooky Crew, and his advice on where to look for more high strangeness, or if you simply want to become a patron blanket hugger for some cool swag and behind the scenes goodness, go ahead and join our Patreon at fearscapepodcast.com/support or patreon.com/fearscapepod. There you can get Riskwatch access to the Terry emails themselves, the WhatsApp conversation about it all with Josh, Stefan, Santosh, and Olaf Phillips, and even any clues that are new that we have found in other Fearscape-related bonus content. You can even help out and add anything that you have found to help us dive deeper into the mystery. And remember, you can also just be a normal blanket hugger, as there are a few non-wristwatch tiers for patrons not interested in Terry Wrist and that journey. You'll still have access to bonus interviews, articles, and live Patreon-only Q&As, as well as early access and discounted tickets to events put on by Fearscape, such as psychic events, tarot readings, etc. Or you can simply support however you feel comfortable, with tiers as low as $1. So join today.
Thank you guys so much for sticking around. As promised, we have Lon Strickler here with us. We are just so absolutely honored and blessed, sir, to have you joining Josh and myself here on Fearscape. How are you tonight?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I big fan, number one. And again, thank you for coming on. I try to avoid asking the kind of standard interview type questions. But I really am interested in, did you ever think that, you would be doing what you're doing now? Like when you were a kid, was this like, one day I want to be, a lead Fortean researcher, or was this just kind of something you stumbled into?
Well, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, so there was no thing as paranormal investigators back then. And when you did talk about that, you got funny looks. So, no, I had no inkling that this was going to happen.
So what was the thing that kind of set you over the line? What was the thing that really got you interested?
Well, I always knew something was up with me. I was raised near Gettysburg, and I'm living back where I got raised, and lived down in Maryland for about 40 years, and I moved back up here in 2016. So anyway, when I was a kid, I used to spend a lot of time on the battlefield. And I liked the battlefield because of the history. I was a little history nerd. And I was about 9. This was like 1967, 1968. And I was riding my bike out there, and I was in the area of what they call the Valley of Death. And that, for those who knew the battlefield, it's between Little Round Top, Devil's Den, and the wheat field. So the second day of the battle, very heavy action there. Anyway, all of a sudden, it was like a TV screen opened up in front of me. And I just started seeing all kinds of stuff. Gunfire, cannon fire, smoke, soldiers. All my senses were heightened. And that lasted for about 30 seconds. And then it just closed off. And, I'm sitting there stunned on my bike, wondering what the hell happened. And but that's the day I knew. That's the day I knew something was different. And, I had, even before and beyond that, I had seen some sense of maybe apparitions or felt spirit energy and such. I am an intuitive, so that contributed to it. And and after that, I started actually doing my own investigations in high school, which was, nobody did that back then, unless you were. Unless you were a powwower or somebody like that. And, I was born and raised around powwowers for most of my life. So I kind of knew the whole culture with the Appalachian folklore thing and the Dutch but anyway, I started doing that for the time I was in high school. Used to spend a lot of nights out in the battlefield, though. Used to take my friends out there, scare them to death. And
now, is that you scaring them on purpose, or just them having experiences?
No, they were having experiences too.
Okay.
And this stuff was drawing toward me for the most part. And I consider myself as a beacon as well as an intuitive, and I did a lot of stuff. I tracked a lot of things. So
it's really interesting. It's almost like it's. I think of it like a gravity well. Like, you're just kind of walking around and you're just unconsciously pulling things in that are just happening to walk around or be close by or whatever the case may be. So
happens all the time.
I mean, like I had a psychic tell me similar. It was like he referred to it as like you're like a stage that has a bright light they want to play on. Is how he referred to it. As.
It didn't bother me when I was growing up and as I got a little older, but I had issues going into antique shops, funeral homes, graveyards, cemeteries. It seems like everybody wants me to hear their story, and gets to be a real pain sometimes. To be honest.
Oh yeah.
I mean, do you and that's the question. Do you ever wish that you could turn it off?
No.
Yeah,
I enjoy it, but it's just part of me, and I've gotten used to it. But it can be tiring sometimes. It can be, especially when I'm trying to sleep.
Yes.
Sometimes you'll get that little window open up and something peering in there, and you're thinking, "Oh God, they're going to leave me alone tonight." But it happens.
My sister's a medium, and she talks about that a lot. And she can hear and see. And one of the things she's worked on over the years is what she calls the double blink. To kind of double blink to kind of just at least get the visual out of the way so she can focus on the thing that she's trying to do, because right now I don't have time for you. I'm because she's a nurse too, so she sees them all the time.
Yeah, she's surrounded by it
all the time, and she's like, I have to take this man's blood. I can't tell him right now that you're sad that you died a year before him. Like,
yeah. Well, I just call that astral chatter for the most part. That's just, when I'm working on something, if I'm working with, a spirit or especially an earthbound or something, I will get that astral chatter come in. You just got to push it aside. That's why I like working with somebody, because they can kind of take over and kind of help alleviate it. And it works both ways too. So,
so do you work with others that are intuitives or mediums or whatever?
Yeah. When I can find somebody that's worthwhile to work with, but I've got a lady I work with now. She's excellent. Yeah. And, so we've been working on some things, especially things involved with what's going on in Chicago. So,
Well,
we're doing some remote viewing. We're going to do some remote viewing and a few other things as far as that goes.
I'm glad to see that over the years, there's become more of an acceptance of the intuitive side and psychic side of things in some now there's still the hardcores that say you can't have anything psychic in there. It's got to be all completely science-based. But for those of us that are intuitive or have family or friends or things like that, we know it can sometimes make or break an investigation. And
absolutely.
Really, and we are, my sister being this way as well, sometimes these folks on the other side need help, and that's part of the gift. So.
When it comes to, and what's going on out in Chicago with these winged humanoids, we believe are ultra-terrestrial beings. And we're just trying to find how they're getting in, why they're coming in. And I believe for the most part it's going to have to be metaphysical evidence that we gather and then go from there and maybe be able to I don't particularly want to stop it, but I just want to understand what's going on. And and if whatever I can do to help, because we've got a huge team working on it. So
it is definitely bumping its way through the paranormal news for the past couple of years. I mean, we have covered many stories, quite a bit, covering the different things that have been seen in the Chicago, especially near O'Hare and things like that.
Yeah, that woman that saw the thing perched on her back fence, one night. I mean, that was a crazy account. I think it's interesting because I know you have a book that is really, I think it's called something about Mothman, the Mothman of Chicago. I'm butchering the name, I know.
Well, I got two of them actually. I've got Mothman Dynasty.
Yeah,
Chicago's Winged Humanoids. That was the one I did after the first year of the sightings. But then the sightings continued, and I had to write another one. So what I did, the first part of the book covered from, I guess the end of 2017 up to the end of 2019. And some of the O'Hare activity got put in there as well. But I was covering a whole lot of winged cryptids. I've been investigating winged cryptids for a long time. And it just doesn't have to do with winged humanoids. It's a lot of different stuff.
Right. Well, and that's the thing I've been seeing is a lot of traditional Mothman folks are pushing back on the Chicago sightings, which is really odd to me since there have been sightings of winged / Mothman type things outside of Point Pleasant for years.
Yeah. I've been looking into the phenomena for, almost 40 years. I mean, I had an encounter in '88 in Pennsylvania that looked very much like what we're experiencing now, what people are experiencing out there now. This phenomena has been around and, it's just been different places, but it just hasn't really gotten out in the mainstream. So, when this thing broke in Chicago, that just really opened everything up. Yeah, of course, you're going to get your detractors. I mean, I mean, that's an anything. I kind of let that roll off my back now.
That's what you have to do. And Josh and I are both from Kentucky. Josh is still there, but I live in Arizona now. So of course now I'm seeing a lot more of Quetzalcoatl and Thunderbird and things like that. But how it all still reminds me of so much of the stuff from out east as well. It's really interesting. I'm anxious to see where this Chicago stuff goes because I have a lot. I do improv comedy, so I've been up there a million times. Have a lot of friends up there, and I've got a friend or two that swears they've seen it walking home from Second City one night. So just perched on the top of a building.
Yeah, I mean the sightings themselves. The whole thing is just. It's remarkable, basically, because the sighting witnesses are very forthcoming. They stick to their story. They don't embellish on it. They, that's unusual. I mean, in the cryptid world, you got a lot of people that, well, let's make it sound better. So we're going to start throwing this other stuff at it. But right now, including the three in 2011, I have about 129 sightings that we believe are valid. But there's a lot that people aren't reporting, and there are others that, I just didn't get enough evidence to really put it out there. So, you gotta take the good and the bad, but I'm trying to get the best evidence out there in order for people to see what's going on and to kind of understand the whole thing. Of course you're going to get people, where's the photographs? Where's this?
Well, they wouldn't believe a photograph anyways.
Well, that's true. But, when you got something that's fleeting like these things have been, and they just suddenly show up, first of all, after you pick your jaw off the ground, seeing this thing, are you gonna fumble for your camera and try to take a photograph? No, I mean this thing's gone.
Oh yeah, I mean Josh will tell you a really great UFO sighting we had in Point Pleasant was so fantastic. I mean we were just watching it. It was like 2 minutes in before we go, oh God, grab our phone. By the time I got my phone up to take a picture or to take a video, it zoomed away. It was already gone. It's like people don't understand. Like your first thought is not, oh, I should take a picture of this. Right, your first thought is, what the hell is this?
Yeah, I mean, unless you're already videoing something, right? You're already taking a video of something else, and then it happens, then you can try to catch something. But I mean, but then you got the weird situations where, it always seems to be something wonky goes on with the camera. Something interferes with the electronics or whatever. There's a funny little meme that's been floating around where it's like, Quickie's got a camera. It's like these two aliens in a spaceship, and they say, "Now, Quickie's got a camera. Hit the button that's going to frazzle his camera system so he can't take a picture." but it really is. It's almost like a defense mechanism for these creatures to not be caught on film. So,
well, I've put it out there that if anybody wants to ever go on a radio show or anything and debate me on this thing, go for it. I mean, and I haven't had takers yet, so
I sure the hell wouldn't. I'll be honest. I mean, just like you said, that's where the respect comes. I mean, it's like you literally just told us how many other sightings you have, but you don't have enough evidence backing it up to put it out there, which already says, hey, look, I'm not putting stuff out there that I don't believe has real evidence behind it. And then that tells you there's so many more sightings that absolutely could be, or like we said, people don't even talk about it that have seen stuff.
Yeah, I got a good bunch of people working with me, and I have from the very beginning. The first group we had, the task force that we had when we started with 2017. Rosemary Ellen Goddard was part of that team, and I was bouncing this stuff off of her. But what we were doing, when Tobias Manuel and I would get a report, we would send it over to her to call up the witness and just get her take on it and see what they say. And the fact that people were getting upset with us because we wouldn't give out witness information or we wouldn't get specific on actual locations and, saying that we didn't follow up. Well, that's just not true. Like I said, if you got evidence if you got evidence proving I'm faking this or anybody in the team is faking this, please bring forward on it.
I mean, just because you're respecting people in their privacy doesn't mean that you don't necessarily aren't putting your full attention and resources into making sure that, you're documenting things to the best of your ability.
That's right. When you get when you get a case, any case, you automatically become part of that case when they report it to you. And the first thing I want to do is keep their information confidential, unless they say it's okay. And
Right.
you do get a couple people that will grudgingly let you do it. But for the most part, it's, you in order to keep credibility, you've got to go ahead and keep everybody's information confidential.
Mhm.
And, I'm not going to ever change it, regardless of who comes after me.
Well, and it doesn't matter what it is. That's the downside to being in our community overall, is there's always going to be detractors, and the worst ones come from within the paranormal field on themselves, and they don't understand how that hurts everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's always going to be when it's something that is high strangeness, right? I mean, people are just sometimes they don't want to know.
Well, and I think it's also too that a lot of people, it's almost like a little bit of territorialism comes into play, So you got the people out in Point Pleasant like, no, Mothman is our thing. Mothman is, maybe you got Birdman out there, so it's just.
Well, I didn't give this thing the Mothman name. That was the press that did that. I was actually calling it the Chicago Phantom. I didn't want it to even be anything near Mothman, but when the press started saying Mothman and everybody in the community was saying Mothman, I said, well, I'll relent. I'm not, but when I can describe the differences, then I will. Yeah. And quite frankly, these things don't look anything like the Mothman at Point Pleasant.
Yeah, my first introduction to it was Tobias's book, The Lake Michigan Mothman. That was my first experience. Gosh, we talked about that ages ago, Josh, and that was my first experience there. And so, again, you just got to roll with it. Like, this is what it is. This is, as much as we hate press, sometimes that press helps move that narrative along and helps move that topic to get seen. So.
Well, it could have been a lot worse. I'll be honest with you. The Chicago press, early on, they were kind of iffy about it. But, I had a few people who were kind of sticking up for me. Mancow, I was on him his show a couple of times. And, he wasn't giving me any crap about it. He seemed to be genuinely interested in it. Mm-hmm. And then of course, Vice actually did a real good article on it, which just got it out there. And there have been some good articles in the press about it. But of course, you always get those that want to sensationalize and say, "Hey, it's a demon," and this.
Oh, and that, You either get demon or owl. Like,
absolutely.
I'm like, what kind of 6-foot owl, 10-foot wingspan owl have you ever seen?
Well, we had some early sightings that were described as owls,
right?
And of course, there've been owl type humanoid beings in the past.
Yeah.
I've actually looked into several of them, but this thing, we only had 3 or 4 early on, and then we get a few here, a few there. There's one area outside of Chicago called Alsip. There's a Coca-Cola factory out there, and it's actually been seen 2 times as Owlman out there at 2 different occasions. So, maybe there is something.
I don't know. I just remember we had Keith Age on the show. Remember he was on, and we were talking to him, and he was like, "It's an owl, guys," because it was the first O'Hare sighting where the traffic controller saw the creature, and I was like, "Keith, that thing's huge, man!
It's like over 6 foot tall, and yes, there is a giant owl, but it stands like 4 feet tall at its max, and it lives in South America or Australia or something. So why would it be flying around Chicago? But when actually was the first quote unquote Mothman or winged creature sighting in Chicago?
Well, 2011, there were 3 sightings in South Chicago that were actually reported to MUFON August and September, then in October. The descriptions were fairly similar to what's going on now. There was a photograph taken, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not really sure what that photograph was. It could have very well been a butterfly, for all I know.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, it was. That kind of got the interest going, but it was just the 3 sightings. Then it just died out. Now, of course, the whole way through between 2011 and 2017, you get something here, you get something there, but it didn't make much stir. But then, of course, when 2017 came around, and the first 4 sightings came into MUFON. And the first one was the one in Oz Park, which was which almost I considered to look like that of an insectoid type being, but it had red eyes, it had large wings, but it went to MUFON. Well, if you get a report into MUFON, they're not going to tell you anything. They're not going to tell you who it was or anything like that. So we had to do some digging. Manuel found her, and she was an attorney, and he talked to her, and boy, she saw something. I mean, I absolutely know she saw something. So about that time, we started getting these owl reports. We had one at one of the late night food distributors, and then there was another one out in Humboldt Park. Then there was another one later, but they were described as owl-like beings. They had the red eyes, but they had a head and stuff like an owl and the wings like an owl. Those went into MUFON. We were able to get some information from some of the folks. It was like pulling teeth for a while, but we got it. But then we, at that time we started putting it out there that we were taking the reports. So I bought an ad on Google, and then it really started to hit. I mean, we were getting reports like crazy then, and but I still know we didn't get all the reports. Nothing near to what people are seeing out there, and so. This is about the time that all the controversy started. For the sake of the show, I'm going to drudge this up a bit and tell you what really happened. But I had an individual who was on our team, and they wanted to get personal information from the witnesses, and kept bugging me about it. And oh God, what am I going to do with this? So I called Rosemary, and I asked her, I said, Rosemary, what should I do with her? She said, kick her to the curb. That's what I did. I kicked her out, and I told her why. And then all of a sudden she became a skeptic. And then she hooked up with the MUFON, Illinois director for MUFON, who, he's a piece of work anyway. And, MUFON was getting these reports. They weren't even following up on them. But when I started following up, my team started following up, then they got interested. Right. So then they wanted to debunk everything. So it was him and her. Then Lauren Coleman got involved. And Lauren Coleman, God love the guy, but he thinks he's John Keel's torchbearer.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
So what happened was, in the Mothman Festival in September, Rosemary actually put a presentation together about what's been going on in Chicago, and she presented it. And that really started getting some interest. And, a lot of people attended that thing. So that really where it kicked off at. But I'll be honest with you, that first year was just a whirlwind because I'd say July and August, I was literally getting phone calls from people 24/7. And this wasn't witnesses. These were people who were familiar with the Mothman prophecies and the harbinger of doom thing, and things are going to happen when people see these things. And they're just calling me at my number and wondering what's going to happen. What's going to happen in Chicago? Are we safe here? Is something going to blow up or what? And I'm trying to mitigate all that as much as I possibly could.
Right.
But no, it was constant. And again, it finally died down, and I could actually concentrate on some of the work. But that first year was crazy.
Well, and something that we talk about a lot, and I think if you've actually read, which I think everybody on the call has, but if you've actually read Mothman Prophecies by Keel, the last probably 2 chapters is really about Mothman. The rest of it's about all these UFO sightings that were happening in the area. Yeah. And so it really makes me think about, the big UFO sighting that happened over O'Hare in 2006.
Right.
And is there any, correlation between that and this stuff happening now?
Well, I think so. And, if you have read the reports we've been putting out, and with the map and the whole 9 yards, we had, when this stuff started at O'Hare full time, like in October 2019, then about 85% of the sightings were coming from the O'Hara area, Rosemont area. And yeah, there was one point where there was a oval UFO seen hovering over the cemetery. There's a cemetery at O'Hara, the Rest Haven Cemetery. They left it there for whatever reason. And this UFO was seen hovering above the cemetery, and a humanoid-like being was ascended up into it.
Wow.
That was seen by one of the dock workers at I don't even know what company he worked for, and but I wouldn't say it anyway. But so that area around the western part of the western cargo areas out at O'Hara has been really busy, and I'd say we've had 5 or 6 actual sightings within 100 yards of that cemetery.
Wow. Maybe UFOs are just taxis for the dead.
Possibly. Who knows?
I like that. It sounds like a great horror movie as well, Josh. I'd watch the hell out of that.
But ever since that, and we had a sighting in Rosemont, in one of the local parks of one of these winged beings in the company of a gray and 2 female humanoids. And the woman who saw it, she said the humanoids and the gray just suddenly vanished in a blue light at one point, and then this winged humanoid took off. And the interesting thing about that, before she even got a chance to talk to me, and she really never did talk to me, she got scared because she had a Men in Black encounter. It was like a Men in Black encounter. The guy wasn't wearing black. He was, I don't know what he was wearing. But she worked at a school, and this guy came up to her in the cafeteria and said, "You didn't report this to anybody." And she's looking at him like, "How did you? Didn't talk to him, but wondering how he found out." And she didn't say anything, and she just got away from him. But boy, after that, she was scared. So, I never did get a chance to talk to her personally because she was just frightened. We exchanged emails, and she was very detailed on what had happened. But like ever since that, then we had the UFO sighting at O'Hara not long after that. And then we've had some truck drivers around that area as well, seeing grays walking around the O'Hara tarmac as well. So there's something going on out there.
Well, and then you always wonder, how far back does this really go, though, right? Like, I mean, Chicago that whole area has had sightings for years and years and years and years. And it's like, have you had that opportunity to have to say, let's look back and research old sightings to see if there's any correlation to what's happening now, like to see if this is not a new phenomenon, but an old one?
Yeah, I mean, and we've been looking at everything. Unfortunately, as far as actually seeing beings or anything associated with the airport other than what happened in 2006, we don't really know. Now, Chicago overall, the whole area is well known for UFO activity. I mean, there's been all kinds of UFO activity.
Well, I've heard a theory. I heard a theory a couple of years ago that the Great Chicago Fire was started by a UFO crash, and not actually by the whatever ladies.
Well, the cow
taking over the lantern.
The cow farted near a lantern or something.
Yeah.
Something.
So
I don't know. I honestly, I've never heard that one.
I hadn't either.
But no, I've heard a lot of weird things that have happened in Chicago. A lot of weird humanoid sightings right in the city. People would see something and just kind of brush it off, and then a couple of years later, maybe I'll give this guy a call and tell him what I saw 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You get that.
While the memory's sharp, right?
Yeah. I mean, look what it did to Dan Aykroyd. Right. So.
Yeah. But no, I mean, this Chicago thing is this whole Chicago incident and the whole investigation cases. I mean, there has never been anything like this. I mean, I just challenge anybody to find something that's been this big for this long, especially in an urban setting like Chicago. There have been a lot of sightings outside of Chicago, but
I just think it's fascinating to still be getting press with the pandemic happening and then the disclosure stuff happening and all of that, that this is still making its way. I think that may be why it's not hitting like Mothman hit in the 60s or whatever, but we still see articles all the time. I mean, now granted we're biased because we're on your website as well, but we see other articles as well, and things like that, other news sources reporting on it. And I think it's fascinating that through the pandemic and everything else that we're going through, we're still seeing stories about this. So you're absolutely right. It's a big deal.
Well, I follow up on all this stuff, and most of the accounts that are getting in the newspaper come directly from me or from Tobias. Mm-hmm. Then they go ahead and do what they want to do with it. But, just like, and more recently, we had this sighting in July 22nd where it seemed like everybody and their brother at the airport saw this thing. And we've been getting, all kinds of reports. And in fact, Manuel's writing another witness interview he had. I'm going to have it in the blog soon. We've got like 1, 2, 3, at least 8 or 9 witnesses of that July 22nd sighting now.
Wow.
TSA agents descended on this thing, like 8 trucks of TSA security showed up. Supervisors from FedEx and United were showing up. The cargo workers were scared to death. I mean, they were hiding in the plane. And now there was one guy who was literally leaving work. He worked for United, and he was driving along the access road. It was right in front of him where he saw this thing up against the fence, and these TSA security people were right there with it. They had the lights, flashlights, and everything on. TSA ain't gonna do anything. They're gonna do is put a flashlight on, hope the thing doesn't kill them or something. But they're not gonna do anything. But this guy, he stopped his car, stepped out, and pulled his phone up. And boy, one of those TSA agents came on him, and they told him, "You get back in your car now and leave." And she scared this guy. So he didn't get a photograph. I wish he'd stuck it out. But then again, with Homeland Security and everything, you take a photograph of something like that, they're gonna pull you in. So he didn't want any trouble. Plus, the airport powers that be and the supervisors and the carrier people, they're trying to keep this quiet. They literally are threatening employees. I hear it all the time. I got people from O'Hare telling me all the time. They're just telling us it's either a heron or an owl, and just, don't report it. Especially don't report to Lon Strickler and Phantoms of Mars. Don't call them guys.
Right.
And we're getting
Well, the same thing happened in the 60s in Point Pleasant. I mean, it was the same thing. They were like, "Oh, it's the sand crane or whatever it is."
Sand Hill crane.
That never was barely around. I mean, it's like, that's always issues I have when it comes to folks outside the community that are skeptics, because they think that because they can say it could be something, therefore it can't be your thing. And I'm like, how does that not work in reverse? Right? It's like, you didn't prove that it was a bird. You know?
I'm somewhat skeptical, but real skeptics have their own little place in hell as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. There's a difference between skepticism and just being an asshole. Like, like legit. It's just like, well, I don't believe you, and it could possibly be a bird, and then the burden of proof is on you, not on them. And it's stupid. So that's kind of where we're standing now. Now, of course, this there was another sighting up near Milwaukee at the State Fair 2 weeks ago, and that was an interesting sighting because there was a Christian rock group that had just got done on the stage, and I don't know who these people were that were working on the stage. I'm quite sure they were part of their crew, but they had some workers who were hired for the the event or for the time the fair was going on, and they were down in front of the stage cleaning up, and that's when this thing showed up. And it's typical of what everybody's been telling us: the bat-like wings, the red eyes, 5 to 6 foot in height, dark in color, and this thing would be screeching and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, walking around kind of, and then it would eventually take off. But of course, the one of the newspapers in Milwaukee got a hold of this and automatically turned into a demon.
So,
oh yeah, I'm looking at the article right now.
Yeah. So, now that made its rounds, and
especially following a Christian concert. Come on.
Yeah, that didn't help any. So I guess Lucifer showed up and wanted to get his face in there. So
so I was sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask because you kind of like mentioned it, and then we got into this, into the conversation here. But I want to go back. So you're all doing some remote viewing, or planning to do some remote viewing. Or what are you hoping to uncover with that? Just whatever you can.
Yeah, I have used remote viewing for haunting cases, oppressions, attachments, the whole 9 yards. Worldwide, I have worked cases, especially in the UK, by computer, basically. I can get an eye on what's going on. I got people there, here. Yeah. And the lady who taught me to remote view actually used to work for MI6. So she was professionally trained, and she was psychic, and she literally took about 6 months to train me on how to do it. And I've been working with others who have been part of that group, and I've got a few friends I rely on to help me out with that. Like I said, I got a new lady who's working with me now, and she's very good. I mean, she doesn't know much about remote viewing, though. If she lets me teach her, I'll teach her. But it's just another tool we use. I mean, when you get into cases like this, it's okay to say, there's something going on there, but we really can't do much of anything. But if you're able to distant heal, I use kind of the same techniques for distant healing as I have used for remote viewing. Remote viewing is like a subconscious thing. It really shouldn't involve any psychic abilities, but nonetheless, you get into the later levels of remote viewing, you're going to get onto a psychic level with these things. And sometimes they know you're there, because I have been physically attacked, psychically attacked by beings on occasion. I literally had a laceration from the top of my sternum down to my belly button one time. Just cut me. And I know it was the entity that I was trying to move on. Yeah. I've had bruised ribs. I've had a lot of different things happen.
So not to make this too spiritual, but do you like ground and ward and all that kind of stuff before you actually get into doing that? Yeah,
I mean, I have my own affirmations and my way of protecting myself before I do this. Yeah. That's something I've built up over the years. You've got to ground yourself. I mean, that's just the basis of the whole thing. You've got to open yourself up to a certain level to where you can recognize the, it's like use a sets of numbers, random numbers, and you turn into you actually develop an ideogram, which you interpret into something that's actually physical. It goes on different levels, and it's a long process. It can take many, many hours just to get a few levels. It just depends what kind of information you're getting. Yeah. But as far as with people who are going through hauntings and going through attachments, and sometimes it works a little faster than sometimes it's protracted. So it runs the gamut. But I tell you, I would never not use it. If I could use it, I'm using it.
100% agree. I cannot not use my gifts when we're out on any investigation. You don't get a chance to turn that off, right?
It's just and that's right. I mean, it's like second nature to you. When you're doing. And this is something that always used to bug the hell out of me. Of course, paranormal TV, everybody sees everything, and everybody, it's not like a real investigation. But I used to love when people go out there to a location and start yelling at the entities, say, "Show yourself," this and that. Okay, well, that doesn't work. I'm sorry.
I don't like the antagonizers at all.
You use all the dramatics you want, but that isn't going to work. And in fact, you may end up pissing it off, and then things get worse.
Right.
I have always said that I believe any paranormal group that is serious about finding an entity, finding an energy, and then actually helping the client needs to have someone who has gifts.
Yep.
That's the only way you can do it. You got to have somebody who can move these things on, or at least calm the situation down.
Right.
Well, and that's what's sad is that, shows like Ghost Adventures and stuff like that, where he just antagonizes it. I saw a meme the other day, was like, didn't they used to hunt ghosts, or is it just Zach getting possessed every single show? Right. And it's like a lot of the younger guys that are getting in, that's what they see and that's what they think they're supposed to do. My old co-host before, Josh, he was that guy. And I had to be like, no, do not let yourself be possessed here, dude. Like, this is not the way you're supposed to do it. These entities could need help. We need to protect ourselves if they're not. But it's sad that's kind of happening, is this we've got to yell at them, and because it's more about getting the video than it is about helping.
It's the getting featured on a YouTube channel and getting views and all that kind of stuff, and getting rather than actually, to your point, helping whatever it is that is trapped in that space.
You've got real mediums who put it on the line, just like Amy Allen. I love Amy Allen because she does things that a lot of people wouldn't even try to do. But that's the way she is in real life. I mean, she is a real physical medium, and she's able to sense out a lot of things. But you talked about Zach. I think Zach is cutting his life short every time he goes out to
100%. I mean, his eyes are all messed up now. I mean, he's just getting more broken every season.
Yeah, and you can see it. I mean, I've had people say, "Oh, what the hell's wrong with this guy?" Yeah, well, that's the way he works.
Yeah,
that's what he wants.
Party hard, Wayne. So,
I mean, more power to you, but no thanks. I'm good. I'm good on that. So keeping it in the paranormal realm, now we're moving into some ghosts and stuff. Obviously, we don't want your whole life to be remembered as just Chicago Mothman. So,
though it might end up being like that.
Yeah, I know. So, but it's like you've been in the game a long time, and I'm sure you've come across some really interesting cases. And what's something, what's a case that really stands out to you that is just the most real piece of something that you've been a part of or had affect you?
Well, we had a case at a pub in southern Wales. It was in a town called Neath. Rural town, had a lot of history to it. I mean, a lot of history went back to the Normans and the Cistercian monks and everything. So it had a lot of, and in fact, doing the investigation was fascinating because we ran into 3 different levels of history as we were working this case. But there was one incident that I will never forget. I still got the recording, to the chagrin of the woman who was running the investigation. But this lady had 2 of her friends with her, from London with her, and they were tagging along when her and her husband were in this pub working. And we've been working this pub now for several months. She didn't live that far from it, so what we would do is we'd hook up on Skype. We've had the laptop sitting there, and I'm watching and seeing and trying to pick up energy. And then I had a couple of other colleagues here in the United States that were on another computer that they were watching as well. So anyway, they were trying to gather EVPs, and they weren't yelling and screaming and acting crazy. They were just trying to get some response. So the guy and his wife, the guy's name was Gary, and they were good friends of the 2 individuals I was working with. So anyway, we did the EVP session. We did a few other things. I guess we were there about 2.5 hours. It was getting late, so she took all the equipment, got everything unpacked and packed up everything, and went home. I guess it was about 4:00 my time, and she called me. Lon, I gotta play this for you. I said, "What?" I said, "I picked up an EVP. I got home and started listening to it. You are not gonna believe this." Okay, so she played it for me, and I heard it, and you gotta play that again. And this voice came over this EVP, over this recording, and said, "Gary, you're going to die now."
Oh my goodness.
No.
And it was like, the typical old hag voice and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, clear as day. And I told her, look, this thing was just probably trying to scare you. Don't worry about it. Well, should I tell Gary and his wife? No.
No.
Don't.
God.
Don't tell
Unless
them.
you want Gary to have a heart attack.
Well, unfortunately, a week later, Gary was at home in London, and he was showing a car he was selling to a bunch of teenagers out in front of his house, and they beat him to death.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my goodness.
Week later. So this woman now, the woman I'm working with now, and I told her, don't ever tell her that we heard this at all, because she finds out we knew that. I kind of felt bad about that, but that kind of hits home when something like that happens. And
it's always like, what are you going to do with that information anyways? You can't, there's no specifics to it.
Stay in your house for a week.
Well, then what if you die of carbon monoxide poisoning, right? So it's like, you don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah. True. But yeah, that kind of stuck with me.
Yeah, bad.
I had another case, and it's in my book, Alien Disclosure, Experiences Expose Reality. And I have been involved with the abduction scenario and alien encounters for a long time. And, I've met some really interesting people over that time. But this one case, and it was actually in the beginning of the book, but there was a young school teacher by the name of Mandy, and she lived out in Eastern Washington State, very near the Idaho border. In fact, I think she was like a mile away from the border, and she could see the Coeur d'Alene Mountains actually in Idaho from where she lived at. So what happened was, they had been noticing these red and white lights above the mountains for weeks, and they just, it's UFO activity, fine, bunch of lights, you don't think anything.
Right.
So one night they had a late dinner. She lived with her mother, and they were washing the dishes. It was late, I'd say about 8 or 9, in the evening. And they started hearing all these popping sounds, and they didn't know where it was coming from. And Mandy looked out the window into the backyard, and these red and white orbs were all over the place. And every time two of them would hit each other, they'd make a loud pop sound. So she went outside and out on the porch and was looking at them, and then got scared. Then she ran back in the house, went out into the front room, looked out the picture window, and they're out there too. So they got the whole house surrounded with these things. So she's freaking out. So to make a long story short, this continued for a couple of weeks. And then one night they were at home, and all of a sudden the lights went out, and they started hearing something on the roof. They heard something in the attic. Her mother was in the bedroom. She was half asleep, I think. Then Mandy was in her room. She heard it. She went running to her mother, and her mother heard it. It woke her up. So then the lights went out. So they're sitting there for about an hour, scared dead, don't know what the hell is in the house, what's on the roof. But like she told me later on, it was like, like little kids running around up there. And but then the lights came back. They were going to call the cops, but what the hell are you going to tell the cops?
Right.
I heard something up in the attic, but there's nothing up there now. So, well, anyway, there was an investigator in Spokane who asked, she contacted me. They told her, call Lon Strickler, ask him about it, see what he thinks. So she did. So they called me, and we were on the phone for about 3 hours, and they were explaining all this stuff that happened and all this stuff that happened. And I'm trying to gauge what this is going on. I didn't have a good feeling about it.
Yeah.
And, but I didn't want to scare. I didn't want to say, well, maybe somebody's sizing you up for an abduction or something, but this doesn't sound good. But I didn't tell her that. I wish I would have, though. I don't even think it would have helped. But anyway, so we were supposed to talk that next night. I wanted them to let me know of any activity that happened that night after they went to bed. So I waited and waited, and I didn't get a phone call for several days. Then the next Sunday, I got a phone call, and it was Mandy's mother. And she was so nice on the phone. She said, "I'm sorry, I didn't call you. We didn't call you, but Mandy's gone."
What?
And I said, "What do you mean Mandy's gone?" "Mandy's gone. She left her car's here, all her stuff's here, and she just vanished." She said, I was going to bed. Mandy was up in her room. I saw her light on in her room from underneath the door.
Yeah.
So I knocked on the door, no answer, and I opened the door up and all the lights went out. And no Mandy. So she calls the cops. She goes outside, run around trying to figure out maybe she's outside somewhere or something. Went all through the house. She finally called the cops. State police showed up. And of course the cops are saying, well, she ran off with some guy, or her car's still there.
Yeah.
But I know that didn't happen. I just know that didn't happen. And it's been 10 years now, and there's still no trace of her. Man, I don't even know if her mother's still alive. I mean,
that's
how you deal with something like that.
That's what I was gonna say. That's the stuff that'll stick with you.
Yeah. I felt bad about not saying anything to her. Could it have helped? I don't know. What am I going to tell? Hide in the closet the rest of your life, though. That's not going to help. They were scared. I mean, it was she telling me it was like living in hell with those couple of nights with all the noises and everything. But that's one of them that sticks in my mind too. So those are enough actually. But I know.
Well, now they're going to stick in my mind, and I'm going to have nightmares. So thanks for that. I mean, it's already bad enough, but
it's heartbreaking.
That's the worst part of for me, the movie Signs, that M. Night Shyamalan movie. The worst part for me is when they're like, he's tucking his kid into bed. He looks out the window and this thing's sitting on the roof of the barn.
Yeah.
And that's like, it gets me every single time. And it's just like, I mean, and I know that's fiction, but it's a little bit based on fact, I think. So.
Well, I think a lot of that is based on fact. I mean, I hear all kinds of crazy stuff. And, every once in a while you'll read a case and you'll think, that's the damnedest thing I've ever read. I mean, I don't know if I want to believe it or not. Then somebody will write a script for a TV show and it's the same thing. So that's where it came from.
Yeah.
That's happened many times. And but yeah, I mean, you've been doing this as long as I have. You hear a lot of weird things, but every once in a while you'll get one that'll just stick in your craw. And I was literally thinking about quitting doing all this when that happened. I really was. It did upset me.
We were contacted, I don't know, a couple of years ago, maybe a year and a half ago or something, with someone who had these red marks on
the red grid patterns.
The red grid pattern, and that led us into understanding and researching into what red grid pattern is, and it just knowing that that's a thing that affects all kinds of people, and it's so random and I mean, it's just there's so much odd phenomena that is encompassed in the overall phenomena that nobody really talks about. It's like,
well, and then you're like, where do you
stuff.
send these people to?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, obviously not the cops, obviously not, people are looking for answers, and that's our whole show, is looking for answers. So we're not necessarily the right people, but it's like, we spent months trying to find help for that family.
Yeah. Well, I've been involved with a case of a, oh God. And I call it the Sioux City entity case. And, actually a pair of ladies I've been working with who are both beacons. They got a young daughter who is actually a psychic. I knew when she was 8-9 years old, when she was growing up, that it was, and a lot of times when you start working with families, you'll find that. Because these energies are drawn to people who have a lot of gifts, especially families where you have kids that are able to see a lot of different things. So, it all started out with a lot of weird stuff going on, stuff flying around the house. It was something that followed them from, they had lived down in Arlington, Texas, and they eventually moved up to Sioux City, Iowa. And I believe that this entity literally put their mother in a nursing home with dementia. This thing was strong. And the case itself, I worked a long time with this thing, and I was just really grasping for one thing. The typical phenomena with stuff flying around the house, the three scratches on the back, which seem to happen. That's one commonality with the scratches on the back or on the arm, and it happens in a shower. That, these things are attracted to the water in the bathroom. Bathroom is the heart of most houses. It really is.
Yeah.
But anyway, she was speaking all kinds of crazy languages and writing all kinds of crazy stuff. And literally, I'd be at home on the computer and be looking at the camera, and her face would just literally change in front of me. I mean, it was just unbelievable. In fact, they had a couple of priests come in there and run out the door because they couldn't handle it. So I started getting involved with that. But the worst part of that particular haunting, or whatever you want to call it, compelling, was that this entity had something to feed on all the time. And it wasn't because of the residents. It wasn't because of dysfunction or, people yelling and screaming and act like a bunch of idiots and causing negative energy. It was because at Sioux Gateway Airport several years ago, and I forget the date, but there was a major airline crash, and they lived right across the street from the airport. And there was like over 100 people had died. And those spirit energies were earthbound. A lot of them were earthbound, and they were getting into the residences near the airport. And this thing had plenty to feed on, because an earthbound energy is like manna to a malevolent spirit or malevolent entity. Even like what they call shadow people. Those things are just deadly. But they fed on this, and we literally had to seal the house up to keep these things out. We were out in the backyard one day looking toward the airport at night, and of course I'm on the computer. Then the girls are out there, and I'm picking up stuff moving around, manifestations all over the place. It was crazy. So we even though it was a duplex they lived in, I don't know if the neighbors got upset, but I literally had her get salt the place. I had her, put a thick line of salt the whole way around the property. And they kind of stopped it, but they eventually moved. And unfortunately, the one girl, Sabrina, who was the main focus of the attack, they all moved out into a farmhouse outside of Sioux City, and it picked back up again. And in fact, there was already an entity there that had issues. So, that kind of lasted for several years until it got to the point where myself and this woman I'm working with now were able to clear it. But it took a long time.
Wow.
It took a long time.
Weird, and I always wonder about things, and maybe this is the Ghostbusters in me, but like an actual house or an architect creating a portal or something, right? My great grandmother lived in a house that at the bottom of the stairs was a closet, and we as kids always knew it was haunted. Grandma was always like, just stay away from that closet, blah, blah. Well, I'm originally from Toledo, Ohio. It's a pretty common home design. My dad ended up buying a house that had the exact same layout, and like all the grandchildren were always like, just that, I don't know, that closet's scary. And then my sister moved into a house. She had issues. We had friends. My sister and I had done a house cleansing, and they pointed to that exact same little closet at the end of the stairway. And it made me wonder after seeing 7 or 8 of these, and every one of them saying that closet at the bottom of the steps is haunted. I'm like, man, did the architect that created this, did he create something scary in there? Like for anyone that built that home?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it's interesting. It seems to be something invariably that goes on in the Midwest. I don't know what it is, but you will get blocks of residents that have haunting issues.
Our whole
I don't know
street,
if it's because the architecture or just the way things are built, or just it's just a neighborhood that's got portals or vortexes or just cursed. There's a lot of indigenous activity in the Midwest.
Or is it just that,
a lot of wars and stuff? So there's a lot of stuff that was imprinted.
Yeah, so Toledo had War of 1812 stuff, ton of that happened there. But I know our neighborhood and the extended neighborhood was near downtown Toledo, and that's where the city cemetery used to sit until they started to expand. So they moved everything. And, when we were kids, my brother had a metal detector. We'd find coffin handles and things like that and, stuff like that. And I'm like, that's why our neighborhood was all haunted. Everybody's got stories about their houses and stuff as well as I do, but I think the root cause there, and of course, then there's the rumor that it was an Indian burial ground before all of that, of course. So.
Yeah, I wish I had a nickel for every Indian burial ground people talk about.
Thank you, Poltergeist.
Yeah, that movie was a trip. I actually knew the guy who wrote the screenplay for Spielberg for that movie. And I had to ask, you got to be crazy. I mean, I can't believe Spielberg even bought into this whole thing. But none of that was even remotely true or could have been true. So,
the house imploding wasn't real.
Yeah.
Going into
Absolutely.
the TV wasn't really happening.
Now the little short psychic lady, real. Zelda was real.
Yeah. Well, that plus the fact that they referenced the UCLA parapsychology department, and that was real. That was Barry Taff and Barry Conrad, and that's basically where that concept came from. And they did some really landmark cases. So So there was a little bit of truth in there, but it wasn't a whole lot.
So I want to be respectful of your time, and I know we've been going here for about an hour, I think. And so I wanted to give for folks who where can they find information about you or what you've got going on, your books? You've got a radio show. Where can they find all that?
Well, I'm an open book, so if you just put my name on Google, you're going to find all kinds of things, good and bad. But it's phantomsandmonsters.com, and everything's there. All my books are listed there. I recently had my last 3 books republished with new covers and a few odd things changed, and for basic marketing. But they did a really good job. It was Beyond the Free Publishing. I got a shout out for them, and. And the group I started was Phantoms and Monsters Fortean Research. That website is cryptidhunters.org, and all the Chicago stuff's there, plus all our cases that we do is there as well. I got Arcane Radio, which is live every Friday night on Beyond Explanation YouTube channel, that's kind of it, but there's always something. I mean, I'm sticking my foot into something all the time.
Oh, we love it. We love following your work, man. Thank you so much for just giving us your time tonight. I wish we could talk forever because boy, I want to dig into your experience a lot.
Well, like I said, if you want me to come back, just all you got to do is ask.
For sure.
100%. Again, thank you so much, Lon Strickler. What an amazing guy. Not just blowing sunshine up your old keister, but we really, really appreciated you spending time with us and just sharing. Man, some of those stories got me, man.
I feel like it's like we touched the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much more to really uncover there.
It reminded me of Eno, like just the experience. Like I want them in the same room together, talking about what it was like in the 60s and 70s. You know what I mean? Like being young and nobody into this stuff. Like I can't imagine, to us, we feel isolated, right? So imagine 40, 50 years ago being isolated. Isolated it was.
Right. They were trailblazers, right? So it's so cool.
We're just trail walkers. So
not to be confused with skinwalkers.
It is not a skinwalker, nor is it Walker Texas Ranger.
It is not Walker Texas Ranger. You are correct, sir.
But can a skinwalker do a roundhouse kick?
It just depends if they've got jiu-jitsu training.
Okay, then. Thanks,
Roadhouse.
JD. Yeah, right.
I bet you, JD, don't answer it because I ain't got time for you, but I bet you've got like 5 forms of martial arts that you have studied, especially that Brazilian one that looks like dancing
Like
or
you're
whatever.
dancing, you dance fighting.
And
Yeah.
drunken style. You know he's in on that.
Yep.
But anyways, again, thank you, Lon, so much. We appreciate you guys. Get out there and get his books. Remember, go to we've got cryptidhunters.org as well as phantomsandmonsters.com. So much cool stuff on both of those. Cryptid Hunters I follow a lot because that's where the majority of the Chicago Mothman stuff has been being posted. But yeah, there is so much just amazing content on those websites, and you will not be disappointed. Lon is such an amazing guy, and his books are pretty fantastic as well. But again, thank you. But Josh, we got things we got to do, man. We got to go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we do.
I want to quickly remind everyone to download, if you are on an Android, to download the Fearscape Media Network app. Really fantastic app. You guys heard us talking to Chrissy about it because we love it so much, and I legit love it. It is really easy to use. All the episodes for every show are on there in order, the way that you want to listen. If you're like me, I Bluetooth it to my car, so I just listen straight off the app. It's really, really great. I really enjoy that. You can, just type in Fearscape Media Network into your Google Play. Go to our website, fearscapepodcast.com. There's all sorts of links, and as well as fearscapemedia.com for all of the network shows and the like. And we should be coming up on if not, maybe this week, I think on a new Astral Stew probably just dropped. So be on the lookout for that on YouTube. That's always so much fun. I love me some Santosh. We need to get him back on the podcast, by the way, for sure. But let's go ahead and get into our final segment of the evening. Of course, Encounters from the Fearscape. All right, Josh, our Encounters from the Fearscape. Love our people so much for just sharing these stories with us and all this stuff. And some of them are just crazy and heartbreaking, like Lon's stories. I mean, I'm going to sit with that missing woman. I've already started researching her and just all of that. Wow. But here's a story that comes from a listener named Robin from Louisiana. So let's go ahead and take a listen to what her story is.
When I was 10 years old, my uncle passed away. His services were held at an older, well-known funeral home in New Orleans. Now, when I walked up to his coffin, my mom walked up beside me. I had a pin that I was wearing, and I asked my mom if it was okay to pin it upon him, which she said absolutely, and helped me actually pin it on him. I walked out of that room into the large main hallway and started to walk toward the main entrance doors to go outside for fresh air. I was about 20 feet from the doors when all of a sudden, one of the doors just started opening. Now, I froze in my tracks. The doors were not automatic and no one was coming through. The door opened by itself, completely. I turned around to see if anyone else saw it, and my dad, my brother, and another uncle who had been talking to each other were staring at the door with their mouths hanging open. I ran to my daddy and started crying. Now, after that, we left because I was shaking and crying so much. I was completely freaked out. I was not allowed to go to the funeral the next day. Now, as an adult, and upon thinking back on it, I'm sure that it was probably my uncle opening the door for me to thank me for that pin that I put upon him.
Wow. Thank you, Robin. Yeah, though these are the stories that I like to hear, especially you kind of getting that feeling, that sensation that, I always quote Andrea Perrin, and I'm misquoting right now, but it's like, we are scared of the paranormal at first only because we think we should be, you know? And so
Well, what really gets me, and I think I've been listening to a lot of stuff on various folks talking about people with gifts and things, and I think what other people don't realize is I think everybody has the gifts. Everybody has these gifts locked away, and whether you think of it as that gut feeling that you get when you meet somebody and you're like, I don't know if I should be around this person, or you feel like you should make a left-hand turn even though you normally turn right.
Right.
Those types of intuitions really come from those psychic gifts, and so your body's just reacting to them.
It takes work. It's like anybody can run a marathon, right? But you can't just go run a marathon.
Right.
We can all run for a little while, right? Just like we get those quick intuitions. But, I agree. I think it's a muscle that needs worked on and built and continued to believe in, and you'll find that power.
Now, unless you're Forrest Gump, then you can just run.
I was running. So awesome, man. Well, what a great show tonight, Josh. I'm just always in awe when we have guests on, because they just blow my freaking mind, but not as much as our listeners, our blanket huggers out there. Just a reminder, get out there, patreon.com/FierceScapePod, and help us out. And you would have gotten to see this live stream, which was really cool. There's a little bit of extra there that the Patreon folks got to see, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But other than that, Josh, let's rock and roll. Let's get out of here. Thank you guys so much for listening to Fearscape Paranormal Podcast here on the Fearscape Media Network. Just a reminder, the first weekend in October, we're going to be in Louisville, Kentucky at the I can never remember the name of it.
Fright Fest.
Fright Film Fest and Paracon. It's going to be awesome. We're going to be there. Come say hi to us. We got some freebies we're going to be giving out, and just some cool stuff. Even Lance is going to be there from Misters of the Dark, so check that out.
Santosh is going to be there too, I think.
Oh, I know we were working on it. So that
I don't know. Cool. It's not official.
Well, if Santosh is there, then both him and I will both be doing tarot readings, because I'll be doing tarot readings. So be on the lookout for that. But let's get out of here. Again, thank you guys so much. This has been Stefan, and keep your eyes on the skies, guys.
This has been Josh. The truth is now.
And remember, folks, hold those blankets extra tight. Things tend to get spooky when you're listening to Fearscape. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
We hope you have enjoyed this guidepost on the road of high strangeness with us. And we thank you, as always, for listening and joining our caravan to the weird and unknown. Please consider supporting us as we continue our journey to find the answers we all seek. FearscapePodcast.com/support.